In this session, we're going to take a look at some creative alternatives to gather information about how much your students are understanding curriculum. So, some creative alternatives for assessment, if you will. This is a summary of the discussion that we had in the Lunch and Learn held on Wednesday, April 22nd. That you will note that there's a bit.ly link to the slides, and this bit.ly link will stay live, and so that any point you want to access the slides. Now, I want to be clear that some of the strategies that I suggest to you in our time together today, I can easily see these as being strategies that are appropriate for grades 1 all the way through up to grade 12. And I would also suggest that these are appropriate for almost all content areas. It could be science, humanities, social studies, um, complementary courses. However, the only one I would say is not a perfect fit would be senior level, so senior high math. I don't know that I see a perfect alignment there. However, certainly I see there could be some fit for junior high. So what we'll do is we'll take a look at some applications. We'll discuss assessment for a bit, and I'll give you some ideas. And like I said, two of the ideas will come from G Suite applications, and then two of the ideas will be third-party applications as well. But before we go there, we need to remember for a moment. We need to go back to our classrooms and we need to fill it with students. And we need to remember what assessment was like in our classroom. And so as you go back to that place, I want you to consider all of the different ways that you were gathering data about how well your students were understanding the curriculum as you were presenting it to them. So you would be paying attention to sometimes body language and their facial expressions, but they seem to understand or not. Sometimes nodding of the head. You would be paying attention to answers that they might be giving you to questions that you have prompted them. You would be paying attention to and observing how they're interacting with their peers in the dialogue that they're having, sometimes how they're working together over a task. You would be observing them as they work with manipulatives and sometimes even how they might be completing a paper hard copy task. So what they're writing, the types of information that they are providing. And you're listening. You're listening to the conversation between peers, and you're taking all of this in, and you're using it as evidence to suggest whether the kids are on track or not, and then adjusting your programming based on that. But now that we're in a distance learning situation, some of that data is harder to access, and so it is very um, sometimes more efficient to rely on written tasks and where students are providing what they know in a written form. And so the strategies and the applications I'm going to suggest today reintroduce those other um, those other areas of data, right? So you can observe, you can hear, you can listen, as opposed to just relying on text completion. So the two applications, as I mentioned, are coming straight out of G Suite. And so we don't even need to leave that familiar G Suite home to find a couple of additional strategies. The first one I'm going to suggest to you is through Google Drawings. A really simple way to explain Google Drawings, it's kind of like Paint that used to sit and sort of does still sit on a Microsoft operating system. And so you can draw, you can create, you can embed objects, you can move objects. And so as we use Google Drawings, and some of the different ways that Google Drawings can be used is for students to create interactive posters. You can provide them with graphic organizers. So using a Google Drawing as that graphic organizer as opposed to trying to play with formatting in Google Docs. Using manipulatives. So anytime that students were working with manipulatives with hands, Google Drawings can provide a landscape for manipulatives. Creating an infographic. Students could create infographics. You don't have to leave to a third-party application to create them. And then even something as simple as tangrams, where students are manipulating shapes and doing that shape and space unit in math. So even doing something like that. And so I'll show you very briefly Google Drawings, but just know that there I will direct you to a place where you can get a number of different templates. So Google Drawings, when you first create one, you can either go through Google Drive to create a new Google Drawing, and so it's simply under New, More, Google Drawings, or the other way to do it is, I've mentioned this concept in the past, but drawings.google.com/create, and this will create a brand new one for you. And so you'll see that it's another way to explain Google Drawings. It's kind of like um, an individual Google slide. So you don't have a series of slides, you just have one, but there's a number of things that you can do in it. And so you'll see across the top, here's where your tools are. You can insert an image, very much like docs and slides from the web, upload by your camera. You can have text boxes, shapes, lines, and then even if you look under the insert menu, there's some additional items that you can include. But very simply, if I wanted to, I could create a I could create an activity where I want the students to manipulate and label a drawing for me. So I want a diagram. I'm going to pull this one in right here. And then I would go and I can make this smaller if I like, but then I would go ahead and add some. This one got very large. And I could go ahead and type in the terms that I want the kids to match. Now, the beautiful thing about Google Drawings is not necessarily the drawing space itself, but it's actually the outer fringes. So by taking the things that you want to manipulate off the side, then you're getting a better, um, more usable space within the Google Drawing. Same, and the other thing I would do is create a larger text box on the side and put the instructions right in here. And so that doesn't have to be on the drawing itself, but the students will have a sense of what to do. So this is just a basic introduction to slides. And if you take a peek at some of the options, it could be something like this at the primary level, where students are having to manipulate particular stages of a butterfly life cycle, and they have to put them in the correct pattern and the correct order. It could be a graphic organizer, so this could be really humanities, social studies, it could be language arts. In this case, this one's very specific to language arts, and so it's a caricature character development. And so you're not messing with formatting in docs. It can just be very simply put right here. And then here would even be an example of an interactive poster. So the template is already made for students. All they need to do is go in and complete it. And so they're not playing with the formatting. They're just really focusing on the content and the concepts that they have to work through. Now, I will point you towards the end to a number of different places where you can grab templates so you don't have to create them right from scratch. But that is a really quick overview of Google Drawings and the great potential that there is within them as a way for kids to demonstrate what they know. That you can just here complete it, off you go. And even just the action of dragging and dropping sometimes is just a nice addition to inputting text completion. So the next addition I have is a little bit more for our older kiddos. So I would suggest probably grade 5 and up. It might be a little bit trickier to do with grades 1 to 4, but I could certainly see it fitting for grades 5 and up. And then this is just using Google Meet for scheduled interviews. So again, when we have done very traditional writing tasks, so whether it is paragraphs, stories, persuasive responses, character analysis, essays, any of those. The challenge is now in this distance learning model is that students have access to so much information through the internet that there is not a 100% guarantee that what they are submitting to you um, is an accurate reflection of what they know. So, in other words, there's lots that they can grab from the internet and could insert into their own writing and with the best of intentions, but then how how authentic is this as evidence of what they know? And so a suggestion is not to eliminate the writing, but a suggestion is just a quick way to access what they know in a really authentic way. And so instead of having students complete a writing task, that you go through scheduling interviews with them. So, for example, it could be junior high language arts or high school, but you can tell them in advance, I'm going to give you 5 topics or questions, and you will schedule with me a 5-minute interview. It could be longer, but I'd start with 5 minutes. And you won't know which topic or question I'm going to pose to you until our interview time. And so they will need to go ahead and potentially prepare for all 5, and then you would proceed to have the interview with them. And you can be very clear and say you cannot prepare enough that you are reading from it, because again, then you can't guarantee that it is authentic to them. You you can communicate that it is in fact an interview, so this is a dialogue. I might be prompting you with further questions, but you need to show me through verbal communication what you know about this particular topic or question. And particularly if you then go and record the meet, then you also have evidence of that assessment. And then very easily, after the 5 minutes are up, you can close off the meet with the student. You can evaluate the students or assess what they shared with you using a very similar rubric to what you would have given them for writing. And then as you return both the rubric, you can also in Google Classroom, you can also provide the link to the recorded meet, and the student can look back on that as well. And no, you may not be able to assess a student for kind of writing conventions, matters of choice, or matters of correctness, but you certainly could add a category for how they present themselves, the type of language that they use, whether they communicate appropriately um, through word choice, through making eye contact, through body language, through what they're demonstrating to be engagement. So this is a really great way to just be efficient with the way that you are gathering some of that, perhaps what would have been written, those written tasks and written information. The students get to connect with you, which is always a bonus. And I would argue that they will probably prepare better for something like this, as opposed to a written task, which then they have to submit. So this would be another strategy that you can use just to gather that. How do I know what the kids know? And it can be pretty efficient, and I would think also pretty powerful. So those are the two Google applications. I'm now going to, as I cover that up, we're also gonna take a look at 2 third-party applications. Now, in the past, or more recently, I have not been as quick to suggest some third-party applications. For one, because they're being developed at a rapid rate, and there's always a newest and latest and greatest, and it's really tricky to keep up with those. And I would also suggest that sometimes we actually don't need some of these third-party applications, but we because we can do very similar things right within the G Suite of applications. You don't need to leave to find something better and greater. However, the two that suggestions I'm going to pass on to you um, have some great potential that would not be efficiently replicated within these. And the first of these is Flipgrid. Flipgrid is a third-party application. It is, backed by Microsoft, and so it does have a reputation behind it. It's well made, well created. And before I give you a quick overview of Flipgrid, just understand that it is an asynchronous way to do what I suggested with Google Meet. So in other words, you could pose a question to a student and then they would create a video response to the prompt that you've given them. So this could be used for learning reflections, book talks, whether it's a whole book or after a series of chapters. It could be a discussion prompt. It can be a project demonstration. So I can see this being used for certainly math and science, even CPF, where you do a demonstration and then you kind of discuss your way through it or at the end with your conclusions. It could be a persuasive debate. So you're arguing for a particular idea. Um, to as we think about persuasive writing, it can be language learning. This could be very interesting for music, or if you're teaching French or something like that, or even something as simple as explain your thinking. There needs to be work that's completed, but now I actually need you to explain and reflect on that metacognitive process. So, like I said, it's the power of video, so that you can listen to your students and observe your students, and we're not relying heavily on text. Now, the nice thing about Flipgrid is it does have a really nice integration with Google Classroom, and so it is not something complicated where we need to make work with our existing LMS, but instead it's got a really nice match. And so I'm going to take you to Flipgrid very quickly, and I will show you what this is looking like. So Flipgrid is set up in such a way that you have grids for different groups. And then within each grid, you would have you would create topics for them. So I'm just going to go ahead and log in. And I will show you briefly just kind of how it looks on the educator side and then how it looks on the student side. So I have created a grid. Now this would be for a particular group. So if you are just getting started with Flipgrid, it might be that you have one for your class. And if you have a different class, you'd have a different grid for that class. And then within this grid, for this particular group of students, I have a number of topics that I have created. And so one of these topics is a would you rather. Okay, would you rather be Macbeth or Lady Macbeth? You'll notice that there is an immersive reader, so it'll read the text if somebody needs it to be read to them. However, and so then the student would be expected to respond with a video on their opinion. Would they rather be Macbeth or Lady Macbeth? Now, from a student view, they would log in with their Google account, and as I wait for this to happen, there are other series of videos that will take you through the specifics of Flipgrid, and I'm not going to get into those details in this session. Um, and I will point you to some of those steps towards the end. However, I'm just going to go here. So from a student's perspective, here is that would rather, and then I would click on the plus button to create a video response. And it would open that video recorder. I can record a video, and then you'll even notice and add some sticky notes. And so this would be really helpful as I'm preparing my verbal response. But that's available for the students, and they would just submit it. And then from the teacher end, once it's completed, then I can go in and see the students' responses. And so here I can see that there is one video and here there's two. So I can just open them up and I can look at any of these, review them, provide them with feedback right within Flipgrid. So very short, that's a really brief overview of the application. There are a number of resources that can take you through the particular steps, but there is great potential for students to demonstrate what they know. with an alternative to just some of those written tasks. And then the last suggestion I will make is using a digital breakout. Um, there is something about breakout activities that, or a challenge like a breakout, where we are so motivated to complete the challenge. And I have observed that whether it is a just a regular breakout with lock boxes and locks, and I've observed it whether it is a digital breakout, it doesn't seem to matter, but there is a motivational factor where students and even adults, they want to solve the problem. And so digital breakouts can be really great as a guided practice, as a review, as a formative or summative assessment. But the nice thing about it is it's not necessarily a how well did you do the breakout. It's a you either do it or you don't. You solve it or you don't. And so it's kind of a nice way where the kids can just kind of, yeah, I do know this concept, and here I showed you. But they really do have to use some critical thinking in order to solve these. Now, through the Breakout EDU website, like if you click here and you create a free account to this website, there are a number of free breakouts that you can use already on this platform. And so it's just a login, and then you will have access to a number of these breakouts. However, if you wanted all of them, there is a paid subscription that goes along with that. But over time, there has been a number of teachers that have actually created their own digital breakouts, um, and there is a spreadsheet of them available in this sandbox here. Now, at this point in time, if you were to look at any of these breakouts, teachers would be able to view them, and you could get ideas off of them, but you would not be able to use them with students as of today. Um, this may change, but as of today, students cannot access these sites. So you can look at them as an idea, but there are 240 that are here on this site that you can take a peek at. And you can see that they are the age target and the content area and even the topic. Now, for those that are interested, there has been some interest. Well, can I create my own digital breakout? And the answer is yes, yes, you can. And it is as simple as using Google Sites, Google Forms, and then any other applications. It's quite the app smash to put one together, but it is doable and can be just as effective. So stay tuned. There will, I believe, be either a lunch and learn or a series of tutorials on how to create your own digital breakout. That'll be a bit more of an advanced session, but if you're interested, then I can share with you how to create your own. Now, that is, and here, if you're really interested, you can get going with some of these very preliminary, very summarized steps. But yes, you can totally do it. Um, in a nutshell, those are 4 different strategies that you can use to adjust assessment or just consider some additional data points to use to figure out whether your students get it or don't. Now, before I let you go, I want to point you in the direction of a few of our neighboring jurisdictions. One is Black Gold. Black Gold, in addition to their Engaging Students website, they've also created a number of templates, Google templates that teachers can open and then make a copy of and use for their own instruction. And same thing with Edmonton Catholic. Edmonton Catholic has created also a number of templates that are anywhere from grade 1 to grade 12 that can be used by just go into file, make a copy, and then you can use it for your own class. And then, of course, I want to share with you the Ed Services team that has created the Continuing Learning website, and so resources continue to be added here. But many of the video resources are also added to the Learning Together YouTube channel. So if you go here, anything and even this recorded session as well will be available for viewing and as a resource for teachers here. And so if you miss a session, you can always catch it after the fact. So that, in a nutshell, is just a couple of different strategies. If you have any questions along the way, you need some support or some help, or just want to problem solve your way through and want a partner or a colleague, please feel free to contact me. Um, I'm happy to help and be available. In the meantime, I hope you stay well, take care of yourself, and it has been such a joy just to learn together again with you.